What if the person you trust most holds a secret that could destroy everything? A teacher, a child, a legacy tangled in shadows stretching across continents. This isn't just a story of protection. It's a battle against a past that refuses to stay buried. How far would you go to keep a promise that could cost your life? The moment when everything changes is closer than you think. If you want to uncover the truth and dive deeper into stories that grip your soul, subscribe now and share your thoughts in the comments, because this is just the beginning. The rain hammered against the classroom windows as the teacher held the child close, her heart pounding faster than the storm outside. She had never planned to be this deeply tangled in a life so fragile and raw. But here she was, holding her student's child, the boy who had no one else. The small hand in hers trembled, a silent plea no one else had heard. She whispered a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. "I won't let anything happen to you." Outside, the streets of a quiet suburban town in America were soaked in gray, but inside this small room, a different kind of storm brewed. One born of secrets, sacrifices, and shadows from a world far away, yet deeply rooted in the mother's Thai heritage. The boy's mother, her student, had disappeared weeks ago without a trace. No calls, no messages, just an empty chair and a silence that screamed questions the teacher couldn't answer. She recalled the night the mother confided in her, speaking softly about family honor and debts owed to strangers with dangerous eyes. Things the teacher had only seen in movies, now bleeding into her reality. Each day, the child looked at her with the same question in his eyes. "Where's my mother?" But the teacher knew the truth was a labyrinth, twisting and impossible to escape. She was the only one who could protect him, but protecting meant stepping into a world that threatened to swallow them whole. A mysterious figure had been seen near the school, watching from shadows, waiting for the boy to slip away. The teacher's nights became restless, haunted by footsteps that weren't hers, whispers she couldn't place. She wondered if saving this child meant losing everything she'd ever believed in, her safety, her peace, even her sense of self. Yet, in the quiet moments, when the child smiled despite it all, she felt a fierce strength rising inside her, born of love and desperation. The question lingered like a knife twisting deeper. How far would she go to keep a promise made in the dark? The night stretched thin, shadows crawling along the walls as the teacher sat by the child's bedside, the faint hum of a lullaby she barely remembered from her own childhood on her lips. Outside, the world moved on. Unaware of the fragile sanctuary they clung to in the small, rented house nestled between rows of maple trees. The boy's breathing was steady, but his eyes flickered beneath closed lids, as if wrestling with dreams filled with faces he couldn't name. The teacher's mind raced. Who had taken the mother? Why had she vanished without a word? In the quiet, a soft knock broke the silence. A visitor at this late hour was never a good sign. The teacher's heart thumped, muscles tensing. She moved to the window, peering through the blinds, and saw a man's silhouette lingering under the flickering street lamp. He was not one of the neighbors, not one she recognized. The Thai amulet she wore, a small, worn charm given by the mother's grandmother, felt heavy against her skin, a tether to a culture steeped in protection and mysticism. She remembered the stories a mother once told her about spirits guarding family, about debts passed down through generations, invisible chains stronger than steel. The man's eyes caught hers through the glass, cold and calculating, sending a chill that seeped into her bones. He spoke one word in Thai, sharp and low. "Return." Return what? The child? The debt? The secret buried deep within the mother's past? Fear twisted into resolve. The teacher knew that to protect this boy, she would have to confront a past she barely understood, and a threat that did not belong to their quiet American town. She reached for the old wooden box hidden beneath the floorboards. Inside, relics from a life lived between two worlds, a faded photograph, a cracked talisman, a letter folded so many times it was almost illegible. The boy stirred, eyes fluttering open just long enough to meet hers, searching, waiting. In that moment, the promise she whispered in the storm was no longer just words. It was a lifeline, a challenge, a battle yet to be fought. And somewhere beyond the rain, the clock was ticking. The clock's ticking echoed louder in the stillness, each second stretching into a quiet drum of urgency. The teacher clutched the letter from the box, unfolding it with trembling fingers. The faded ink revealed a name, one that matched the stranger's cold stare outside. Her breath caught as fragments of the mother's warnings whispered back to her. Some debts are not paid with money. The boy watched her silently, as if sensing the weight of what she held, the invisible chains pulling tighter around their fragile lives. She slid the letter into her pocket and moved to the door, her steps soft but deliberate. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, the street lamp casting long shadows across cracked pavement. The man waited, unmoving, like a predator patient for its prey. "You have something that belongs to us." His voice was low, almost a threat. The teacher squared her shoulders, feeling the power of the amulet against her heart. "I have a promise," she said quietly, "and I will not break it." The boy's small hand found hers through the open door, a tether to the life she vowed to protect. The stranger's eyes flickered, something unreadable passing between them. A flash of movement, a whispered command in Thai, and the man stepped back into the shadows, vanishing as silently as he had appeared. The teacher closed the door and locked it, her pulse a steady drum of warning and determination. The question that haunted her now was sharper than any fear. What price would they pay for holding on to hope? In the dark corners of the night, secrets were stirring, and the story was far from over. The teacher sat back against the door, her body trembling from adrenaline she refused to let show. The boy's fingers tightened around hers, grounding her to the moment, to the promise she swore to keep. She glanced at the clock. Midnight had passed, but sleep was a stranger now. Her mind replayed the mother's final words, spoken in broken English, heavy with worry and love. "Protect my son no matter what." Outside, the wind shifted, carrying distant sounds, sirens' voices, the faint echo of footsteps retreating into the night. The teacher knew they were not safe. Not yet. The phone buzzed quietly on the kitchen counter. She hesitated before answering, fear tightening her throat. A voice spoke, calm but cold, slipping easily between Thai and English. "We know you have him. Return what belongs to us, and no one gets hurt." The teacher's eyes fell on the boy, asleep now, peaceful for the first time in weeks. Her heart ached with a fierce, quiet strength. She whispered to herself, a vow stronger than any threat. "I will protect you, no matter the cost." The line went dead. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. Outside, the night wrapped tighter around their fragile sanctuary. And the question lingered, how far would she go to keep her promise when the past refused to stay buried? The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating, broken only by the soft rise and fall of the boy's breathing. The teacher's mind raced, piecing together fragments of a life she barely understood, but now held entirely in her hands. She pulled the letter from her pocket again, tracing the faded words with trembling fingers. There was a name, an address, and beneath it, a single word written in bold Thai script, "Settle." A cold realization settled in her chest. This was no longer just about protection. It was about settling a score written long before the boy was born, a debt carved deep into the bones of his family. Her eyes drifted to the window where the rain had finally stopped, the streets glistening under the moonlight like shards of broken glass. She wondered if the mother had known the full cost when she disappeared, if she had left to shield her son or to buy time. The boy stirred again, his small voice breaking the heavy quiet. "Teacher, will she come back?" The question pierced through the knot of fear and uncertainty in her heart. She swallowed hard, searching for an answer that would hold them both steady. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I promise I won't let anything happen to you." Outside, footsteps approached, slow and deliberate, stirring the fallen leaves. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent, and the night held its breath once more. The teacher's heart pounded as she stood frozen by the door, her hand hovering over the lock as the bell rang again, louder this time, urgent, demanding. She looked down at the boy, whose eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and hope. The child's small grip on her skirt was steadying, grounding her in a world that felt ready to unravel. "Stay here," she whispered, though her voice trembled with uncertainty. Peering through the peephole, she saw a familiar face, an older woman wrapped in a worn silk scarf, her eyes sharp but kind, carrying the unmistakable scent of jasmine and lemongrass. The woman spoke softly in accented English. "I am from your student's family in Thailand. We have come to help." Relief and suspicion warred inside the teacher as she hesitated, the unanswered questions hanging thick between them. The woman pressed a small envelope into her hands, handwritten, the paper fragile with age. "Inside is what you need to understand the debt and how to break it." The boy watched silently, the weight of their fate balanced on the fragile thread of trust between strangers. The teacher's gaze lifted to the woman's, and for the first time since the storm began, a flicker of hope sparked in the dark. But as the door closed behind them, a shadow moved just beyond the streetlight, and the night whispered that the true battle was only just beginning. The door clicked shut, sealing the brief moment of fragile hope inside the quiet house. The teacher unfolded the delicate paper, the script flowing like a river of secrets. Names, dates, promises made in another time, in a land far from here. The woman sat beside her, speaking softly of ancient debts and family honor, of a power that reached across oceans and generations. The boy nestled close, sensing the weight of what was being shared, but too young to grasp its full meaning. Outside, the street remained silent, but the air thickened with unspoken threats. The stranger who had come before was still out there, waiting for a chance to reclaim what he believed was owed. The teacher's eyes met the woman's, a question burning between them. Could this ancient knowledge be their salvation, or the key to a deeper darkness? A sudden sound shattered the quiet, a window rattling, a shadow crossing the yard. The boy gasped, clutching the teacher's hand tighter. She stood slowly, the letter clenched in one hand, the other shielding the child. "We must face this," she said, voice steady despite the storm roaring inside her. The night had drawn its first line, and the teacher knew there was no turning back. The past was alive, and it was coming for them all. The window shattered with a sudden crash, splinters flying like shards of ice into the dim room. The boy screamed, pressing closer to the teacher, who pulled him behind a battered wooden desk. Footsteps thundered across the floorboards, slow, deliberate, and then a voice, low and gravelly, filled the air with cold menace. "Where's the boy?" The teacher swallowed her fear, clutching the letter tighter. "I'm here. He's with me." A figure stepped into the pale moonlight filtering through the broken window. The stranger, eyes burning with a dark promise, hand reaching for something concealed beneath his coat. The woman from a mother's family stood beside the teacher, hands trembling but eyes fierce. "Enough," she said in flawless Thai, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. The stranger paused, surprised, but the tension only thickened. The boy looked up at the teacher, his small face pale but unbroken. "Will you protect me?" She met his gaze, the promise echoing louder than the storm outside. "Yes." But as the stranger took a step forward, the teacher knew this was not just a battle for one child. It was a war that spanned continents, histories, and secrets that refused to stay buried. And somewhere deep inside, a question burned brighter than fear. What price would she pay to keep her promise alive? The stranger's eyes flickered with flicker of something unreadable, regret or calculation. And for a moment, the room held its breath. Then, with a swift motion, he pulled from beneath his coat, not a weapon, but an old, worn amulet, identical to the one hanging around the teacher's neck. "Your promise means nothing without the truth," he said, voice low but heavy with meaning. "This child carries more than blood. He carries a legacy, and a legacy demands balance." The woman stepped forward, chanting softly in Thai, her words weaving through the air like an ancient spell, binding, protective, desperate. The boy clung tighter to the teacher, sensing the storm of forces beyond his years swirling around him. The teacher's gaze dropped to the amulet, the symbol etched into it, a symbol she had only just begun to understand. A circle that loops back on itself, endless, unbroken. The stranger's words echoed. Balance must be restored, or all will be lost. The room pulsed with tension, the fragile promise hanging between past and future, between love and sacrifice. And in that moment, the teacher knew the loop was not just around them. It was inside them, pulling tighter with every breath. The woman's chant grew louder, her voice weaving through the shadows like threads of light, fighting to hold back the dark. The teacher's fingers brushed the amulet at her neck, feeling its cold weight pulse against her skin, alive, demanding. The stranger's eyes locked onto hers, a silent challenge burning in their depths. Do you understand what it means to carry this burden? To carry his mother's past? She swallowed hard, the truth settling deep in her bones. This was no longer just about protection. The boy's small hand reached up, touching the amulet around the teacher's neck, as if seeking the strength it promised. Her heart clenched, a fierce tide of love and fear crashing through her. "Then help me break the cycle," she whispered, voice trembling but firm. The stranger nodded slowly, a flicker of something softer breaking through his hard exterior. "The debt is owed but not unpayable. The path is dangerous, filled with choices that will change everything." The woman stepped closer, her eyes steady. "You must decide. Protect him at all costs, or let the legacy take its toll." The boy's gaze never left hers, a quiet plea shining in the dark. Outside, the night seemed to hold its breath. The storm finally stilled, waiting for the choice that would shape their future. The teacher's breath hitched, the weight of the decision pressing down like the humid summer air before a thunderstorm. She glanced at the boy, his small face serene yet edged with a silent courage that surprised her. Her fingers tightened around the amulet as the room seemed to shrink, time folding it on itself like the endless circle etched into the talisman. "Whatever it takes," she said finally, voice low but unwavering. "I will protect him." The woman nodded, her expression softening as she reached into her bag and pulled out a worn, leather-bound book, its pages yellowed, edges frayed. "This contains the truth of the legacy, the rituals and the sacrifices," she explained. "It is the only way to break the cycle." The stranger stepped back, the hardness in his eyes melting into something almost like relief. "For now, you hold the key. But the path ahead is treacherous, both outside and within." The boy yawned, leaning against the teacher's side as sleep claimed him once more. The teacher closed the book slowly, the words inside promising answers but demanding courage she wasn't sure she had. Outside, the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, casting long shadows that whispered of battles yet to come. And in the quiet that followed, the loop spun tighter, binding past the present promise to fate mother to child. The teacher sat silently as dawn painted the sky with soft streaks of pink and gold, her fingers tracing the worn cover of the book, feeling the weight of generations resting in her hands. The boy slept soundly beside her, innocence untouched by the heavy threads woven through their lives. She knew the coming days would unravel everything she thought she understood. The quiet streets, the simple rhythms of her American town, the boundaries between worlds. A whisper of jasmine drifted through the cracked window, a reminder of distant temples and shadowed forests in Thailand. She glanced down at the amulet again, the endless circles symbolizing the loop they were trapped inside, a cycle of protection and sacrifice that refused to break until someone dared to face it fully. The phone buzzed on the table, a message flashing on the screen. No words, just a single photo. A silhouette of a woman standing at a temple gate, hands folded in prayer, eyes searching. The teacher's heart skipped a beat. Could this be the mother, reaching through the distance? Or another piece of the past, pulling them deeper into the loop? The question hung heavy in the quiet morning light, and the teacher knew their story was far from over. The teacher stared at the photo, her breath catching as the woman's face slowly came into focus. The same eyes, the same determined set of the jaw. The message had no words, but it carried everything. A call for help, a warning, a promise. She looked down at the boy, still sleeping, peaceful for a moment that felt too brief. Outside, the wind stirred the leaves, carried with a scent of incense and rain. Familiar, haunting. The teacher folded the book carefully, the pages whispering secrets she had yet to unravel. Her fingers brushed the amulet once more, the endless circle now feeling like both a chain and a key. She whispered into quiet room, "We're not alone, and we have to find her." The boy stirred, eyes fluttering open, and in that instant, the fragile thread of hope tightened, pulling them both deeper into the unknown. The boy blinked up at her, confusion and trust mingling in his gaze. She smiled softly, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "We have to find your mother," she said gently. "But it won't be easy." The weight of that truth settled between them, heavy and real. The teacher stood, moving toward the window where the world outside was waking. The quiet streets, the distant hum of morning traffic, the first glimmers of day that promised nothing simple. Her mind raced to a fragment of the past. The debts, the legacy, the shadows that chased him across continents. She knew the road ahead would test everything. Faith, courage, the very meaning of family. But beneath it all was a promise she had made in the storm, the vow that had pulled her into this loop and would not let go. Outside, a single crow called, its voice sharp against the soft dawn. And as the sun climbed higher, the teacher reached the phone, dialing a number she hoped would still answer, a lifeline back to a world she barely understood, but that now held the only chance they had. The line clicked, then crackled, familiar but distant. A voice answered, cautious and low, carrying the weight of long nights and whispered fears. "Hello." The teacher's voice trembled, steadying with resolve. "It's me. I have him. We need to talk." There was a pause, heavy with unspoken truths. Then the voice replied, sharp and urgent, "You don't know what you're stepping into." "I know enough," she said firmly. "I won't let the past destroy him." A sigh, weary but edged with hope. "Then prepare yourself. Because the debts don't just linger, they hunt." The call ended, leaving silence thick in the room. The boy tugged at her sleeve, his small hand warm against her skin. She knelt, meeting his eyes with a steady gaze. "We're not running anymore," she whispered. "We're fighting." Outside, the wind stirred once more, carrying the distant echo of a promise made long ago, one that still demanded its due. The loop was closing, and neither of them could break free without paying the price. The teacher stood, the weight of the moment pressing down like a storm about to break. She gathered the boy close, feeling his steady heartbeat beneath her palm, fragile but unyielding. There was no turning back now. She grabbed the leather-bound book and the amulet, tucking them into her bag with care. Every step from here would lead them deeper into a world she had only glimpsed, a world of shadows, secrets, and sacrifices. The morning light seeped through the curtains, casting long, uncertain shadows across the floor. As she opened the door, the cool air brushed against her skin, carrying with it the scent of jasmine and rain. A reminder that some ties are invisible, but never broken. The boy's hand slipped into hers, fingers curling tight like a lifeline. They stepped out into the waking world, where every face could hold a friend or a threat, and somewhere just beyond sight, the past watched, waiting for the moment to strike. The teacher whispered once more, a vow carried on the wind. "We will find her. Together." The endless loop had begun again. They walked down the quiet street, the soft crunch of gravel beneath their feet, the only sound breaking the morning stillness. The boy glanced up at her, eyes wide with questions he couldn't yet voice. She squeezed his hand gently, offering what comfort she could. Each step felt heavier, as if the past stretched out behind them, trying to pull them back into the shadows. The leather book pressed against her side was a reminder, truths waiting to be uncovered, choices demanding to be made. They reached the edge of town, where familiar gave way to the unknown. A small shrine stood beside the road, its faded paint cracked but still holding the faint scent of incense and jasmine. The teacher knelt, tracing the carved symbols with trembling fingers, feeling the presence of generations before her, their hopes and fears woven into the wood. The boy watched silently, sensing the weight of what this place meant. She whispered a prayer in Thai, words taught long ago by the mother, a plea for strength, for guidance, for protection. The sun climbed higher, casting light on the path ahead. Uncertain, dangerous, but theirs to walk. In that quiet moment, the loop stretched before them, endless, but also full of possibility. And with the boy by her side, the teacher took the first step toward breaking it. They stayed by the shrine for a long moment, the air heavy with silence and the faint hum of distant memories. The boy reached out, touching the worn wood, as if trying to hold on to something unseen. The teacher looked down at him, her heart swelling with a quiet resolve. No matter what came next, she would stand between him and the darkness. They rose together, stepping back onto the road that stretched into the unknown. With every step, the weight of the legacy felt less like a chain and more like a call, a chance to rewrite the story that had held them captive for so long. The town behind them faded into morning mist, and ahead, the path twisted into shadows and light. But they walked forward, hand in hand, ready to face whatever waited. The promise lingered between them, a fragile hope wrapped in the endless circle of the amulet. And as they disappeared into the horizon, the loop began to loosen, just enough to let a new story begin. The sun dipped low, casting a golden glow over the winding road ahead. The boy's small hand tightened around hers, steady and sure. They paused at a crossroads, one path leading back to the safety of the known, the other stretching forward into mystery and risk. The teacher took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every choice she had made, every promise kept. With a soft smile, she stepped forward, her voice calm and certain as she whispered, "We carry our past with us, but it does not define us." The boy nodded, eyes bright with trust and courage beyond his years. Together, they walked into fading light, two souls bound by love, ready to face whatever came next, freeing themselves from the endless loop at last.